Okay, welcome everyone. If you're tuning in at a later time, this is Easter Sunday. So for the Christians, we can say Christ is risen. Yay. Are you ready to read from Emma Fox?
I am. Emma Fox has been talking about the Beatitudes. And so for today, the title is Rejoice in Persecution. And he begins with a scripture from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you, and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you.
And I have the Lamsa translation, which is fairly different. It reads, Blessed are you when they reproach you and persecute you, and speak against you every kind of bad word falsely for my sake. Then be glad and rejoice, for your reward is increased in heaven. For in this very manner they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Okay, continue on with what Emma Fox has to say, please.
In view of what we know about the teaching of Jesus, that the will of God for us is harmony, peace, and joy, and that these things are to be attained by cultivating right thoughts or righteousness, this is a very startling statement. Jesus tells us again and again that it is our Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and that the way in which we are to receive it is by cultivating serenity or peace of soul. He says that the peacemakers who do this, praying in meekness, shall inherit the earth, have their mourning turned into joy, and that, in fact, whatever they shall ask the Father in the manner of this teaching, that will he do. Yet here we are told that it is blessed to be persecuted as the result of our righteousness or cultivating right thoughts, for by this means we shall triumph, that it is cause for rejoicing and gladness to be reviled and accused, and that the prophets and illumined ones suffered these things too. All this is indeed very startling, and it is perfectly correct. However, persecution only becomes an occasion for rejoicing when we are deeply aware of our real nature, our true immortality, and know that the suffering of our bodies can be transcended and even transmuted by the state of our consciousness. Persecution can be for us a blessed condition when we realize that in such moments we are really advancing. Here's a short scripture from Revelation, chapter 2, verse 10. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life, is a promise that may become a reality right here on this earth.
Thank you. Well, those of you who received the email may remember that the title of the talk is Jesus and the Widow's Mite. And it starts based on Mark 12, 43, 44. And I don't know which translation this is, but it was the one where I found the article. And he called unto him his disciples, and saith unto them, so I'm guessing maybe King James, Verily I say unto you, this poor widow hath cast more in than all they which have cast into the treasury. For they did cast in of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. Now, the Lamsa translation, going from a little bit earlier, when Jesus sat towards the treasury, he watched how the people cast their alms into the treasury, and many rich men were casting in a great deal. And then there came a poor widow, and she cast in 2 coins, which are farthings. And Jesus called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I say to you, that this poor widow has cast in the treasury more than all the men who are casting. For all of them cast of their abundance, but she of her poverty cast everything she had, even all of her possessions." And then a commentator on this, and there's no name identified with this commentator, he writes that this moment, seemingly small to outsiders, reverberates with deep theological and practical implications. And that's what I want to explore today in a way that until a couple of days ago I'd never thought of. And let me move over so I'm a little more centered. So this writer said, as the disciples watched the wealthy drop their gifts into the treasury, they likely marveled at the amounts being contributed. And I think we can relate to this in terms of the billionaires and the millionaires who are giving so much money to this and that and to various politicians. You know, we marvel at how easily they're handing out $1 million, $100 million. It was, and the writer says, it was a spectacle of generosity decorated by large sums and the honor that came with financial prowess. Yet, in the midst of this ostentatious display, a poor widow quietly approaches. With nothing but 2 small coins, the very definition of insignificance in the material world, she approaches the treasury. What the world deems worthless, Jesus sees as priceless. He calls his disciples over to deliver a lesson that stands tall above the tallies of wealth and clinking coins. So that was something I found online. And you can see the standard interpretation of this. You are more worthy of God's love when you give away all your money till it hurts. And the more you give out of what you have for basic living, the more blessed you will be. Well, you know my take on religion, that religion, as opposed to the spiritual walk, is designed to get money from you and to tell you what to do, so the big guys say, so God will like you, when in fact, so you'll do what the big guys want you to do and be a nice follower. So when I came across this, and I don't know where it came to my attention, but it was like, well, heck, there's a different message here. If you take away the religion and its graspingness, and this is what I came to understand, I realized that it's a tale of how easy it is for us to miscalibrate our ability to contribute to making the world a better place. You know, it's so easy to negatively compare ourselves with the highly visible people who are doing good things. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, the Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, who's done a fair amount of good for a Republican, my bias there, Oprah. You know, they get headlines. They start schools. In fact, at a conversation recently, an old friend of mine here mentioned that someone who he'd known from school just came back from Africa, where 20 or 30 years ago he had gone as a missionary, Catholic priest, Jesuit, okay, and he started a small school to help elementary school kids get at least the bare minimum of education. He's returned home now. His health is worn out. He's well past retirement age. He leaves behind a college with a graduate program from that small beginning. And that's the point here. Whatever you are able to give, even if it looks like the widow's mite, maybe there's much more. And so let's for a moment assume that that story really happened, to remind you that there's 35,000 known errors in translation, forgeries, and insertions into the New Testament alone. So, and I'm not an expert, so I can't tell you whether this is one of them or not. But, you know, it might have been a concoction by a writer who wanted people to believe they should give till there's nothing left. And so let's assume that the story actually happened. And here's this widow casting her 2 pennies into the treasury in front of this guy called Jesus. And in front of all these guys who were pitching bags of money into the treasury, to whom such a pittance was laughable. And in fact, we can take it from Jesus' remonstrance to his disciples. They thought it was laughable that she took her 2 pennies and tossed them in, with all this other wealth being tossed in. She was giving what she had to give out of love for the divine. She probably had no idea that she was creating a message of giving that would echo through more than 21 centuries. Think of that. She was doing what she could, her widow's mite, and giving it. And 21 centuries later, we're here talking about her. So, what message should you take from this? Well, at its most basic, keep giving your 2 pennies worth of good for the world, however little you think it might be. And never disparage yourself for whatever you can give. Because every mite that you give does contribute to making the world a better place. And you never know how far the echoes of your 2 pennies, your 2 cents will spread. And to be honest, this is a talk that I've sort of struggled with. And when I got here, I started thinking of 2 cents that I've known about. And I want to share some of them with you. I think I've shared this story about Father Chuck, who was Franciscan but left the Roman Church when he discovered what other priests were doing and was told to shut up, and joined the old Catholic Church. But I think it bears repeating for what we're talking about today. So he joined a small, what Roman Catholics think is a splinter Catholic Church. They don't follow Rome's teachings. And part of the charter is each priest is responsible for earning their own keep. In other words, you're not dependent on the church to be paid. And he worked hard in high tech. And he told me toward the end of his time about 1 month that had been really, really difficult. Some of his congregants had been going through a really rough time. His workload had been really overwhelming. And this had been a really, really, really bad day. A day filled with frustrations, disappointments, feeling futile. And he told me that when he finally got off work, he drove home to the church. He lived in the basement there. He went up to the sanctuary. He started yelling at God. He took off the robe, threw it on the altar, told God he'd quit. He couldn't do it anymore. He was done. And then he walked back downstairs to his apartment to fix dinner and figure out what he'd do next. Half an hour later, his phone starts ringing. And no sooner does one call hang up on one call, but another one comes in. For 3 hours, it was call after call after call after call. Some people he hadn't talked with in years who were calling him to thank him for what he had done to make their life better. Call after call after call. You can imagine what the divine was communicating to him. that his widow's mite, as small as it seemed, as futile as it seemed, he was being told that he was changing the world. He was being told, for all the pain, for all the effort, for all the sense of futility, that people were being lifted up. He had no idea what his widow's mite meant for others. And then as I was working on this, I started remembering some people in my life, and I'm going to share a few with you. When I was perhaps 6 or 7, a neighbor man who knew me, because we both find ourselves at the barber shop, and we'd talk a little bit while we were waiting our turn, asked my mother if he could take me to his church. They were having a father-son dinner, and he and his wife had no children. He said he'd really like to have me come. And so I went with him. No, I suspect he may have been aware that my father was a failed feature in my life. But for whatever reason, he asked me to come. And I still remember how good it felt to be in a company of men who welcomed me, who seemed happy to spend time with me, appeared to enjoy my company as a little kid. This is something I never got from my father. To this day, when I think of it, I feel good. To him, it was probably just a widow's mite. Never thought that it was anything big. Or when I was attending college, there was a Quaker meeting I wanted to go to, and a professor and a fellow Quaker from another college some distance was willing to pick me up because I had no transportation, take me to the meeting, and afterwards drive me back. And on the way back, I'll say out of nowhere, but he started talking about some of his struggles living up to the Quaker testimonials. Now, you may remember last week I talked about the Quaker testimonials, what we call spices, living in simplicity and peace, and so forth. That's the only time that I think I ever met him. But to this day, his story of his struggle, I use as a reference point as I do my best to live up to those testimonials, and often come short of what I'd like. But that is my touchstone. And then finally, I call him my foster father, Bill Hayden. We met at a Quaker meeting while I was in college and struck up a friendship. And for over 30 years, he provided a consistent, caring friendship, serving as a mentor when I needed mentoring, serving as an anchor when I felt adrift. Didn't see each other that often, didn't talk that often, but when I needed to talk something out, he was the person I called. His presence, his input, his caring for me helped shape the person that I am today. And interestingly, every so often, even now, I get a sense that Bill Hayden is over one shoulder or the other, being with me. And when I sense that, I give him my thanks for all he did for me. A widow's mite. But boy, has it changed me. And did these 3 people ever think that they were going to have a lasting, major impact on this person's life? I don't think so. They were giving of who they were. And it probably didn't seem important at the time. That's the key with the widow's mite. Now, I want to mention, I'm watching someone give her widow's mite right now to give you an idea of how broad the options are. My assistant here in the office, and she's also a fellow folk dancer by the name of Marie, is in the process of giving her widow's mites. She lives essentially paycheck to paycheck. She worked for a religious organization, and when they restructured, she discovered they hadn't been paying any retirement or any other government taxing for her, and she was out in the cold. And she's of an age where she's just cobbling together the best she can. Well, a couple weeks ago or so, one of our fellow folk dancers, one of our oldest in her 80s, how to put it, experienced a medical catastrophe and had to be rushed into surgery. And she's the last person alive in her family. She has no support network per se, and Marie realized it. And as soon as she heard, she made herself available to be there while under surgery, representing her best interests. Took the information from the doctors, was told that she could never go back to independent living again. She worked with, and I think from what I overheard, sort of hounded the case manager to get, we'll call this lady, the one with surgery, Pat, not her name, of course, to get her in a good retirement home, senior center in assisted care. She'll never be out of assisted care now. And this is a woman who in her 80s has been independent her whole life. She made the arrangements, did the consultation with Pat's financial advisor. She sold the car, Pat's car, because Pat can never drive again. Handled getting volunteers to pack up Pat's apartment, arranged for the movers to get the stuff moved to Pat's new place. And Pat, of course, is having real difficulty adjusting to the sudden loss of independence, loss of physical capability. And Marie has been there every day to help her along. She is spending of her own substance because she hasn't got the money to live on. She missed one of our days of work because she had to. This is giving the widow's mite, folks. Now, in an overall worldview, her widow's mite might seem awful small in contribution to the needs of the world right now. But her contribution to helping create the best possible life for the remainder of Pat's days, that will reverberate in Pat's life for all her time here. And given our experience with Lift on Therapy, probably Pat will carry this to the other side as a positive influence, as a positive memory. Does Marie think she's doing anything particularly special? No, she's doing what she's called to do, what she feels called to do. So now let me swing the spotlight of discussion to all of us here. Paul, in the Christian Bible, writes that each of us is gifted with one or several of many skill sets, if you will. In Corinthians, he allegedly wrote, and I say allegedly because a huge portion of Paul was written much later than his life. But here is wisdom, and this is from the Lamsa translation. Now there are diversities of gifts, but there is only one Spirit. And there are diversities of ministries, but there is only one Lord. And there are diversities of powers, but it is the one God who works all things in all men. And let us make sure that we understand men is humankind. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man as to help him. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the means to distinguish the true Spirit, to another diverse languages, to another the interpretation of languages. But all these gifts are wrought by that one and same Spirit, dividing to everyone severally as they will. So what I say to you is, Do not look askance at yourself or diminish the power of whatever kinds of widows might you have to offer, or even that which you have given in previous times in this life. Just trust that when you cast your widow's mite into the world, it will land where it should, and it will make that world better for your having made that contribution. And for all you know, your small contribution may echo through the centuries. Or not. It doesn't matter. You have given what you could. And then an unsigned author in a commentary wrote, in contemplating this widow's gift, let us ask ourselves how we can embody such faith today. In a world that often measures worth by abundance and bigness, let us choose to measure it by commitment, by love, and the willingness to trust God to use our gifts for the highest and best results. Our giving can echo through time, demonstrating the very heart of God to a world and to individuals desperately in need of experiencing His love. And this afternoon, as I was sitting on the throne reading a book that happened to be there, I came across a quote that has nothing to do with the widow's mite, but I think has everything to do with its significance. Chains do not hold a community or world together, or even a person's attempt at living a good, happy life. It is threads, hundreds of tiny threads, which sew people and individual lives together through the years. And friends, I know you all give your widow's mite. Never be bashful about it. Just know that what you might think of as a widow's mite might not be just a thread, but a rope holding together somebody's life, or a community's well-being, or peace in this world. And that's what I have to say tonight. So, any thoughts, any comments? Yes, Lori, and then Charlotte.
Why don't you let Charlotte go first?
Okay. Charlotte, I will unmute you. Okay, go ahead, Charlotte.
Yes, sir. I want to say to you, the Reverend and to the Missus of the Methodist Church, I would like to contribute $50 to Sister Marie. It doesn't seem like much,
It's a lot.
but it makes me like the world to her.
Yep.
Anything I can do to help anybody, I'm willing.
Thank you.
She gave me a mop handle when it was the blistering snow outside. They kept me up and able to walk to and from where I needed to go. She don't know how much that meant to me.
Oh, man.
And if I had more to give, I would. And if Sister Phyllis would come tomorrow and meet with me, I would give it to her. And anything I can do to help anybody, God in heaven knows, I'm willing. I don't have much, but I'm willing to share what I do have in the name of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay. Now, Lori, go ahead.
God, after that, is there anything to say? That's the widow's mite right there, in a very literal sense. And okay. So, first of all, what a beautiful talk. Not only because of the topic, but because of how you keep sharing more and more of how things are for you, how things have impacted you, and that gives us that intimacy that is the core of what it is to be in real community, not just transactional community. So thank you so much for that. I also want to say that there's there's an additional sort of the other side of the coin. No pun really intended, but it kind of works. And it's the internal widow's mite, which is the internal way to look at this. And the word mite is from way back, like Indo-European, whatever, and it means like a little slice. And the widow means one who is separated from everything, from all of, from all of culture and everything. And so I was doing a little research on this, and what happened when I was completely done, now 4 years ago, when I thought I was going to not make it through the night, and I had nothing left. I no longer had wine to hold on to. I had no longer had overeating to hold on to. I was so depressed. I was so overwhelmed, and there was nothing left for me to do. I'd already done all the doing things you could do, and I thought this might be it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And in that moment, I'm looking back, I'm saying that I was the widow, and the mite that I gave was my certainty. I wouldn't have told you this at the moment, but was my certainty that I couldn't do anything further. And when the idea to try something further dropped in, I did not believe it would work, but it did. And gave me my life and blossomed from there. So it's kind of like looking at what you told and what I've just told. It looks to me like what do they call those things where the sand falls through it?
Oh, hourglass.
It's like an hourglass. So whichever way you look through it, Yeah.
Thank you. Somebody else with a contribution? Yes, Ellie.
Sometimes that the widow's mite, isn't a physical amount. You can't measure it. There's been many times in this journey, I mean, as little as 2 years ago, that when, Donovan and I have faced stuff, I've reached out, just, found out that Christians didn't live up to what they said, even though the book said certain things. I mean, we've had this discussion. Or people would show up, unexpected, or said they would, and then they did. They didn't go back on their word. And I look at those as widow's mites, because whether they realize it or not, that helped. Sure, the physical stuff helps, but those things that hit here, the emotional and mental, I mean, those are, as Lori Kay just explained, those are widow's mites as well. A few of you know when, Donovan had his surgeries a couple of years ago. My best friend came out. I met her at a reform school, but anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, we met, through the internet, we became close again. And she came out, the day after his surgery, but she was there. So it helped. And it helped Donovan knowing that I had someone physically there. Sure, I could have gone through it without anyone there. And there was, a couple of people that knew that she came out, and it helped them to know that I had someone physically here as well. And then that first week when we got home, that was, that also stretched everything. And then, this year, beginning of the year, most of you know what happened. The support. I mean, I look back on, the people that made phone calls, to other people, the people that support, I'm never going to know the full story of who all helped, but just know that those are all widows' mites. So, I look at those things and I try to give out the same way that others have helped me. Can I do a lot financially? No, never been able to. But can I loan a listening ear? I can do that. Can I offer a prayer, light a candle? Yes, I can do that. I heard from a friend of mine last week that she had, I don't know if I shared it or not, or if I got a chance to, she had lost her son. They had the aid car, the EMTs had gotten to him too late, in the park of where he lived. So that was, her only son that ended up transitioning over. And, she finally got a hold of me, and that day was a good day for her when she finally got a hold of me. And so we talked for quite a bit. And she told me, she goes, I just want to thank you for being there. Okay, I answered the phone when she called, but she needed that time to talk. So that's a widow's mite. Brian, the work that you do, Lori K and Lori R, and, the work that you guys do, Charlotte, all those things that you guys do, Leah, those are all widow's mites. Phyllis, the things that you do. So, thank you for your perspective when you talk, Brian, and, sharing those things, because sometimes it's in the sharing that we can see a different perspective. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ellie. Anyone else with a contribution? Yes, Lori K.
I just have a question for you and for the group, really, I guess. So what do you call it when you want to give your widow's mite, and the person who needs it will not accept it? I mean, I think that's very sad. I have a friend who lost her sister. I've known my friend since we were in junior high. And she didn't let me know for like 3 or 4 days, even though we all have Christmas and Thanksgiving together for the last 10 years. And she said, I just didn't want you to have to drive all the way across the city. I said, honey, I would drive all the way across the world for you. What are you talking about? But she can't do that. So it just struck me that sometimes you can't give your mite in the way that you want to. So, give it energetically, give it some other way that.
Back when I was doing psychic readings, I had to come to peace with the fact that I'd given the person valuable information and I knew they wouldn't use it. And I had conversation with God about that, and God basically said, you did your part. And when you offered, or in this case, were prevented from offering, you did your part. And best we can do at that point is just lift it up to the divine and say, okay, God, here's my love, here's my caring for them. Do what can be done. Okay? Thank you. I see Charlotte has something. Let me unmute Charlotte. Okay, Charlotte, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I want to say the word is right. As the Lord say, give what you can. Because my Bible tells me it's freely to give than it is to receive. And when you give the best you can and do the best you can no more be asked of you. In Jesus' name, who gave his life for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Lori R., go ahead.
I didn't hear the message. Sorry, we had company. But Lori, to what you were saying, I've come across people many times in my life that I knew they were sent across my pathway, but I also knew they weren't accepting all of what I was sharing with them. But I have since found out I used to work at a Christian children's home for incorrigible kids. And a lot of these girls are friends of mine on Facebook, and a lot of them have spoken with me and told me how many times the things that they were taught and the things that they learned came back later. They would remember in their mind, and it affected them when they were ready for it, to receive it and to understand it and to try to change their life in that way. When you do counseling with people, you find that a lot. And I think many times we sow the seed. We can always sow the seed, but they have to do the watering for it to grow. And sometimes that's not till later. At least I found that a lot of times.
Thank you. Thank you for being here on a day that the Christian Church regarded as so blessed. May the blessings rebound to all of us. May the eternal message live in all of us. May we walk in joy, walk in safety, walk in the knowledge that we will hear divine call when it's our turn to take action. We give thanks to the divine for all the good, for all the guidance we receive, for watching over us as we depart from here and guiding us back when it's time to return. We give thanks to our health, for all good that's coming, and for this beautiful world. Help us to be among those who lift it up rather than reduce it. In the name of the great loving God, amen.